1. The invisible third party. Patient, female, 31 years old, no pregnancy after 6 years of marriage, family conflicts due to adoption issues, which led to domestic violence by her husband. The patient left home that night due to emotional distress and tried to throw herself under a train after getting drunk. A passerby found her and sent her to the ER. Rescuer's statement. I found the woman lying on the rail tracks. Luckily, I was able to rescue her before the train arrived. But this woman had a hideous face and would not stop crying. Her strength was astonishing, and she spoke a language that no one could understand. What's even stranger was that she spoke in a middle-aged man's voice. After being rescued, she broke free several times and attempted suicide again. Fortunately, the police passed by and called for support. It took 6 strong men to get her under control, and she was immediately sent to the hospital. In the emergency room, the patient was restrained on an iron bed. Her continuous struggle rattled the bed and made a lot of noise. There was a nurse who could understand the language. The language turned out to be a Norwegian dialect. The man's voice was saying, "Let her die, she is tired of her life and chooses to give up this body. You have treated her poorly, and I will make her happy. This woman is mine, she chose to give up, but I want her," mixed with all kinds of yelling and cursing. The police brought her husband in. He signed the consent for her treatment and said his wife was a native of Poland, had no foreign family members, and had never learned any Norwegian, let alone a dialect. The patient growled and growled at her husband with a man's voice repeating, "This woman is mine now. She's mine. You don't treat her well." Round 1. I tried to sedate the patient twice, then switched to a different sedative using the maximum dosage for her body weight the third time, but it was all in vain. It was 4 o'clock in the morning already, but the patient was still restless and noisy. I asked the department head and her family for permission to use unconventional means of treatment. Then I approached the patient alone and found that he couldn't understand any of the languages I spoke, and I didn't understand his language either. We couldn't communicate, so I didn't know what to do. It seemed that it was impossible to persuade him to leave. I had no choice but to resort to using my golden needles to try a special 13-needle acupuncture technique which could be helpful in situations like possessions. By the 3rd needle, the patient screamed and began to speak in a woman's voice, interspersed with the man's voice. The woman was frightened and barely knew what happened. She just kept pleading for help in Polish, while the man's voice scolded her and tried to dominate. The conversation revealed that the woman was drunk and couldn't accept the way her husband treated her, so she had tried to kill herself and leave her husband to live in guilt. When the train was coming, time suddenly stopped and a man appeared and spoke to her. She didn't know the language, but understood what the man meant. The man committed suicide in this neighborhood over a year ago because of business failure. He felt regret after dying and was too ashamed to go home. Watching his body being pulled away, he did not want to follow that shattered corpse either. He couldn't feel the passing of time and didn't know what date it was. The woman had come out of her body when the train was coming. As soon as she emerged, she had been seen by this man, and they connected. The man sensed what she had gone through telepathically and asked her, "Do you really give up voluntarily?" She was furious and said, "Enough is enough. I don't want to live anymore. I don't want a family or a husband like this." The man then asked, "Can I take care of you?" The woman was still angry and said, "Whatever, if you want." And that was enough to seal a contract between the two souls. The woman felt time suddenly start to move again, and the train was coming. A passerby carried her body away and the train whistled by. She recoiled at this point and immediately thought of her body. The next moment, she felt an endless darkness, a strange oppressive feeling, and an unfamiliar scent beside her. The man had entered and gained control of her body, because she had renounced her body and agreed to let the man take care of her. The man hated that someone had prevented her death, so he tried to ram her body into the speeding train. Then the police arrived, and she was sent to the hospital. Round 2. Just now, the woman saw 3 beams of lights piercing through the darkness, and the black mist faded. Then she regained control over part of her body. But she wasn't as strong as the male ghost, so she was scared. However, I found that I could communicate with the male ghost through her, though not in the Norwegian dialect. The woman's spirit was translating for us. The official negotiation began. I negotiated with the male ghost and asked him to give up and come out. This was not his body, and this woman's life should not end. The male ghost said, she said herself that she did not want this body, she gave up control and accepted the care I offered, so the soul contract has been established. You have no right to interfere with her free will. She was drunk and emotional. Her mind was not clear, I said. What she said doesn't count. Now she's made it clear that she regrets it. The contract cannot be voided unilaterally, the male ghost said. Karma is formed as soon as the words are spoken. She must go with me. This physical body is dead. Her family treats her poorly, and I will treat her well. She is very pretty. If you don't leave, I'll keep inserting needles, I said. It's going to be very uncomfortable. I'm a ghost, what do I have to be afraid of? The male ghost said. I can't die again. It seemed that negotiation wouldn't work, so I began to insert the 4th and 5th needles. At this point the woman spoke, saying she regretted her impulsive temper and begged the male ghost to let her go. The male ghost's voice began to tremble, as if in pain. It was also the first time I had done this special acupuncture treatment, and I had no idea what would happen. The hospice chaplain arrived, but he just sat in the corner mumbling and did not offer any help. Round 3. The male ghost's voice began to tremble, and I felt encouraged. I wanted to see if I could trick him again. So, I asked the woman to tell the male ghost that after I placed the 6th needle, I would begin to electrify him and gradually increase the voltage. If he still refused to go, his soul would shatter. Having said this, I asked the priest to open the door and stay away from the doorway. The male ghost said, okay, you win, I'll go. This hurts too much. Don't electrocute me. I'll just go. Then the woman's body relaxed. The priest opened the door and snuck out. Damn it. I knew the male ghost was unsure whether he could die again or not. Becoming a ghost had been beyond his cognition a year ago. There were too many things that had surprised him during that year. Logic had already become meaningless. Fortunately, he had not become too knowledgeable yet, otherwise, I might not have been able to fool him. I was relieved to see the woman calm down. This night was too exciting. I was just about to call the nurse in when suddenly the woman's upper body popped up, startling me. If it weren't for the restraints, she could have hit me right in the face. The man's voice returned loudly, laughing maniacally. He began to speak English, with a strange accent and simple words. I won't leave. I fooled you. Ha ha ha. I won't leave. I fooled you. Round 4. It was now after 5 a.m. and I was tired. Many doctors and nurses gathered in the aisle, all keeping a distance. They wouldn't leave, nor would they come closer. I calmed myself down, placed 2 needles in the Hoku acupoint, and connected the electroacupuncture machine. I warned him one last time to leave. He just kept laughing. I turned on the power and began to increase the voltage. He started howling and repeating in English, mine. Mine. My woman. I inserted 2 more needles in the Senyingio acupoint, connected the machine, and turned on the electricity. The male ghost began to beg for mercy in English. Please. I said simply, leave. Go away. Go. The woman's body went limp, like a puddle of flesh, without bones. Her haggard face was sweaty, her lips were cracked and bleeding, her wrists were bruised from struggling, and her arms and legs were trembling from the electric pulses. I was afraid of being deceived again, so I waited for a while to see if he would come back. Then I gave her in 4 with more sedatives. She was last sedated at 2 a.m., and now it was dawn. She fell into a deep sleep. I unplugged the power and removed the needles. At that moment, a violent force struck my chest and then my back. The energy was eerie. The temperature in the room didn't change, but my hair stood up. I could feel that he held a grudge against me, but he couldn't break my energy guard. He had been electrocuted earlier, and now he must have been hurt again by striking my energy guard. One thing was for sure, he was no longer in the woman's body. When I left the examination room, the nurses gave me a weird look and didn't dare to get close to me. All I wanted was to get off work and go to sleep. The woman was discharged after 3 days in the hospital and there were no more incidents during her stay. Key points. The woman had decided to give up her body before she attempted suicide, which weakened her control over her body. Her fear, helplessness, ignorance and temper led her to establish a soul contract with the male ghost unknowingly. The male ghost was a new ghost. His perception of and logic about life and death were overturned by still being alive after death. Suicide didn't solve his problems, instead, he ended up in an even worse situation. He couldn't let go, wouldn't go home to attend his own funeral, and refused to follow the guiding light to the next stage. All because he believed that suicide was a sin and he would forever be bound in purgatory. Therefore, he experienced what his free will chose, being stuck as a ghost. But he felt lonely. He didn't want to go anywhere, and he didn't belong anywhere. He lost his faith, himself, his direction, his home, and lost his sense of belonging. He trapped himself. His belief, faith, and confusion trapped him. Epilogue. I discussed this case with my soul. My soul said there has always been a spirit guide beside him, but he held on to his belief, and the guide sensed that this was part of his arranged homework that was planned for him before he was born. It was an accident that he victimized that woman. An add-on assignment to teach the woman a lesson, a warning. Her suicide attempt and rescue were both planned before her birth, but being overpowered by a ghost was not. This plot was added in order to wake up the male ghost and to teach the woman to treasure her life. Otherwise, the woman would have attempted suicide again due to a miscarriage 2 years later. She arranged her pregnancy in 2 years, but discovered the fetus was deformed after the first trimester, and she had to have an abortion. The loss devastated her, but it was another life lesson for her. Her second suicide attempt was meant to be successful, but after being possessed, she will not consider suicide as a way out anymore. In 2 years, she will still have the planned miscarriage, but she will only be depressed for 2 years. At the age of 37, she will get pregnant unexpectedly and give birth to a baby boy. That boy will take care of her when she is old. He will be the reincarnation of the male ghost, although right now he is still in the bardo, a Buddhism term that means the intermediate existence between death and reincarnation. The male ghost will be trapped in bardo for more than 10 years and then transcend along with another soul who committed suicide at the rail tracks. After recuperating in the astral world for 50 years, he will return to an earlier timeline to reincarnate so he can fulfill his soul contract with the woman. The woman's soul will also be glad to fulfill the contract this way. Notes. To improve coherence, information obtained from the following sources are also included in the story. Her husband's statement when he was questioned by the police officers. The female patient's statement while receiving psychological counseling during her hospitalization. My higher self's narrative. At the time of writing, the boy should be almost 10 years old. This was my first experience of such cases, and it became the beginning of a series of similar stories.